like to invite you to another session of the Bastion Round Table today. We've got a couple guest speakers here that I've known for some time. We've got Paul Snowdon, based in Toronto, Canada, and we've also got Sean Asian, who's based in Melbourne. I'm going to let both of them introduce themselves in a second and go through a bit of their background, and then we've got a couple themes to talk about. But I guess what I wanted to start off was give a bit of an introduction around the theme today. So we're going to be talking about universities, education, academia, supply chain, any gaps in skills or challenges for the future around the next generation and the next wave of talent coming through as well. Both our speakers here today have an accomplished professional and academic career as well, so it'll be really interesting to hear their thoughts as to what's taking place right now and also some of the challenges moving forward. For me personally, I thought this topic was interesting on a personal note because I had completed my master's in supply chain. I think it was 2016, and look, the content was great, but I found it exceptionally theoretical. And some of the theories that we had talked about were theories that have been discussed for years now. These weren't new concepts. And again, look, I'm not saying I could rewrite a better program or a syllabus for a specific course, but it did make me think, and I've often thought around, what are we teaching the younger generation? What do they need to know to be successful moving forward? And it's an interesting topic because I do think there's a variation in terms of who's teaching what and how they're learning and what we're building with this next generation of talent coming through. So that's why I thought today's theme would be quite interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it over to our speakers now and get them to introduce themselves. So Paul, if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to pass it to you just to get us going and give us a bit of background on yourself.
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Dr. Paul Snowdon, and it's wonderful to be here, and thanks for having me, and Sean. I guess the thumbnail sketch on me is that I'm kind of a hybrid scholar practitioner with probably more emphasis on practitioner than the scholar. I run a consulting company by day called Working Theory, and that focuses actually on workplace coaching and team effectiveness, all of which was the focus and the emphasis of my doctoral research. And the other part of me is that I actually work as an academic, of course, in the evening. And sorry, Tony, am I frozen here?
No, you're good.
No, I'm good?
Yep.
I'm sorry, on my end, I'm frozen, so I apologize. But the alter ego to my consulting is my professorship. And so I teach at a number of universities here in Canada. And that's kind of my niche, is that I bring that sort of balance between theory and practice. You know, the academic community benefits from the practical approaches and needs the business and inputs, and vice versa. The business world needs the structure and the rigor of the academic community. And so that's kind of where I live, as the bridge between these two worlds. And that's definitely informed the kinds of ideas that we'll be talking about tonight for me.
Sure. Oh, that's great. Well, thanks for that, Paul. And Sean, if you wouldn't mind giving us a bit of an intro and a background. Actually, before you start, Sean, I will quickly say to everyone, Sean and I have known each other for 6-7 years now, and he was actually a former candidate of mine. I actually placed him into Dematic back into Singapore. This is around 2014. So yeah, we've had a bit of a hands-on working experience with each other as well. But Sean, yeah, if you want to give us a bit of an intro on yourself and what you're doing nowadays.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Tony. It's really a pleasure to be with you and Paul. My name is Sean, and I'm a professional engineer trained in industrial engineering. And I did my PhD in Singapore, as you mentioned, focusing on supply chain management, specifically risk management and supply chain. And I had a few back and forth, like Paul, between university and industry in the past years. And now I'm working at Trobe University and serving my students as program director for Master of Supply Chain and Logistics. I feel that having such conversation is quite essential, and I thank Tony and Bastian consulting firm for inviting us to have this conversation. And as an immigrant, I think that it's very relevant to discuss all those all these kind of items, and also take the challenges that our international students or universities working with international students into consideration as well.
Sure. No, absolutely. Okay, well, great. Look, thanks for that, guys. So, Paul, I'm going to start with you. We've got some defined just kind of areas we want to cover on this conversation. The first is universities play such a pivotal role in our society. What do you think is working well, and what do you see as the main challenges it faces moving forward?
You know, it's a big question. It's an important question. And when you step back and I think about it, like the university fundamentally, it's a public institution. It's there to create value, and historically, it's created value through a myriad of ways. Creation of knowledge, of course, it being central to everything a university does. But it's also created value because it's an economic pathway for its students. It's created value because of the cultural and formative kind of experiences that individuals have when they come through. And even as a political force, universities and students have been a source of political change, and they continue to do so. But if you start with the premise of the university creates value and its students create value for society, what happens if society's definition of value changes? And I think that's kind of where we're at, where society, the society we're living in right now, is shifting. It's shifting in terms of, consumerization of content. It's shifting in terms of the type of unique experiences and designed experiences that people are expecting. It's shifting in terms of, what people expect out of a university degree in terms of a job. I mean, you mentioned that your degree, even at a master's level, and that would suggest that it didn't fully equip you for your role that you were moving into afterwards. And this is where things start to become a little less tenuous and a little less obvious, that the skills that people need and what society needs out of the university can be out of sync. And I've certainly seen it in the universities that I've been a part of here in Canada, where at the undergraduate level, you could argue that they're largely doing a good job in terms of creating a student with a generalized skill set. But those, if you think about now where those students are ending up, they're ending up in jobs that are hybrids. They're ending up in jobs that are not this cookie cutter role. And yet our undergraduate programs don't equip them with all of those types of skills. And so what do students have to do? They have to go elsewhere to get those skills to speak and be either marketable to get the job, or if they're in a job, to really learn and get the skills they need to actually be competent at that job. And that same holds true even at a graduate level. And that makes it rather difficult. And sorry, guys, am I coming through okay? It's glitchy on my end, and I just want to know if it's glitchy on your end.
No, I mean, I can see and hear you fine.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. I'll keep going then, and I'll just assume that the tech is all working great. But then, so that now if you think about now at the executive education, continuing education, the master's level content, and you start to actually see what's the match between the content and the application. That the lack of the practicality and the lack of the integration with industry around what are the specific skills that a leader would need given the degree that they're pursuing.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of get away with it at the undergraduate level, because in a way you can say, well, we're giving basic skills that are going to be enable their career in the future. But as you get more specialized, that disconnect, especially with the cost of those programs, becomes incredible. And I think this is where the universities right now have the most opportunity and the most risk.
Yeah, okay. No, I think that makes complete sense. I think that's, certainly in the same position that I was talking about at the beginning here, where there is the real life application of the theory and the logic that you're being taught, and how that applies to the field you want to move into. Sean, what aspects of current university supply chain education programs do you find relevant and strong? Where do you see the real value in supply chain education coming through in the work environment?
Yeah, sure. Wonderful, Tony. And thanks, Paul. I think, when we look at the programs that universities are offering and kind of compare it with, and basically looking at the trend and the way that they progress. And then I compare the programs that, I was kind of involved as a student and now as an academic. To be honest with you, we need to give some credit to universities at the same time as well. So I think looking at the, some of the supply chain logistics programs that we see in the market, paying attention to fundamentals and theoretical aspects of supply chain and logistics, I think it's quite strong and solid in most programs that we see. And it's specifically beneficial to students who come with no prior knowledge in supply chain and logistics. So as Paul mentioned, I think at undergrad level, I think it's quite, and also postgrad level for students who don't have any prior knowledge in supply chain and logistics, I think it's very good for them to kind of get familiar with this program. And I find it quite strong and relevant. Mm-hmm. The aspect that I find kind of relevant is paying attention more to practical component of supply chain logistics programs. So looking back again during the time that I was a student, there was no kind of engagement of industry in our curriculum and courses. But nowadays we see that universities and academics are trying really their best to engage, industry partners in their program in different ways. So as they bring guest lecturers from industry, they, try to organize different types of events to engage industry and create an ecosystem where students can interact with industry leaders and so on. So I think it's quite promising, while there's still room for improvement, but I find it really interesting. And the other point that I want to mention here is paying more attention to soft skills that universities now are working on, which is really, kind of promising in my view, if we invest more on, such initiatives that would really help our students and future graduates. Again, looking back during the time that I was a student, there was no such training in soft skills, communication and leadership and networking and so on. But nowadays we have a lot of resources that we see that universities are investing in boosting and enhancing the soft skills for students at different levels. I'm not saying that we are perfect, but I think that looking at the trend, we can see the growth, and hopefully, as Paul mentioned, we can use the opportunities that we have and kind of improve and enhance the programs that we have.
Sure. No, and one other thing I wanted to add on this area is I can see how it would be challenging on what areas to focus on. I think, traditional definition of the word supply chain has naturally evolved over the last 20, 30 years, and today's definition of supply chain is probably significantly different compared to what it was 20, 30 years ago, but it also has different meanings for different industries, different products, different services as well. And so to summarize a broad standard of knowledge across all the functional components in supply chain would be difficult to narrow in on, right? And where do you focus, whether it be the front end demand or S&OP inventory side, or it's the logistics execution, or it's the supplier sourcing piece? And where do we touch? What do we touch? How do we teach? How do we inform in those areas? It can certainly be challenging. Paul, are universities equipping supply chain managers with the right skills in the modern supply chain? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's actually like a perfect question to piggyback, because to a certain extent, I think the answer is, well, it's a yes and a no. At the macro level, you could say yes. The fundamental skills that supply chain practitioners need. We want a reliable, robust, predictable, stable, supply chain, and the numerical quantitative techniques to manage that are very well understood and very well developed in the universities. And I even am on the advisory board of a university here in Toronto on their supply chain program. And they're so proud, and I'm proud of them too, of their quantitative analytics and how that sets their students up for success in jobs in supply chain around data analytics, which is fantastic.
Yep.
But the question is, we have a known set of skills that are easily predictable, and we can map directly the program and content to develop that. And I think the universities are awesome at that, and it's because they're tighter and tighter with their industry partners around what those specific needs are. But the needs that are broken, in my opinion, and Sean alluded to it, is on the soft skills. And what the industry doesn't realize and doesn't feed back and doesn't materialize right in the university system are the specific kind of skills that they need. I'll give you a real example. I was one, for instance, is innovation and creativity.
Yep.
So if you think about the classic kind of supply chain person who is rigorous and analytical and button it down and, don't ship air, like let's make sure every pallet is loaded correctly kind of guy or gal.
Yep.
I was working with a Fortune 100 company a couple years ago, running major consulting work with them. And we did a bunch of these workshops, which were all awesome. And we reported out to the VP of the supply chain. And guess what the feedback from the VP of the supply chain? We had like 40 people from across North America in these workshops over an extended period of time. They're best people. And his feedback to me was, we already knew all this stuff. and okay. Fortunately, we got to do a bit more work together. And later on, I actually profiled the creative problem-solving capabilities of the team.
Yeah.
And there's like 4 steps to creative problem-solving. Clarifying the problem, generating ideas, developing solutions and iterative prototyping, and then implementing. And guess what were the skills or the preferences that these people, these 40-odd people from this Fortune 100, this company's been around for over 100 years, like well-entrenched culture. Guess what were the actual skills or competencies that they were amazing at? Clarifying the problem and implementing. What's the problem? Okay. Fix it. Okay. That's classic efficiency thinking. They were awful at the innovation stuff, which was idea generation and solution development and iterative prototyping. And yet the very thing that this Fortune 100 company needed, they did not have the skills in-house to do. Now, these are all skills that can be learned, of course, but it has to be learned somewhere. And the question is, does it get learned at the university in an integrated manner as part of a curriculum? Or is it, a corporate entity that teaches and does it? The same thing goes on with dealing with complexity and ambiguity, the soft skills and how to manage through that. There are so many disruptive technologies hitting supply chains right now. The role of Amazon and what it's doing to even traditional industries like paper, and how it's disrupting and forcing radical thinking in a centuries old industry. to what's happening with climate change and sustainability, to what's happening with COVID, to what's happening with globalization. And the question then is, if you don't have the creative capability in your people to think through and generate new solutions to unexpected and unplanned problems, how will your supply chain react and survive? And these are where I think the big breaks are right now.
Yep.
Is we don't have capability and we don't think around these kinds of things in the curriculum. Even at the master's level, it's specialized often, usually, on technical content, not on integrative thinking. And I think there's a massive opportunity there.
Yeah, no, that's really, I think that nails hits the nail on the head. Sean, given the forever changing economy, what challenges do you see existing in supply chain education programs?
Wonderful question. Thanks, Tony. If you allow me, I can kind of continue on what Paul kind of constructed for us here as a building block, which was great. Looking at the trends in supply chain and logistics, Tony, you know better than me that what the impact of COVID-19 on businesses and our economy. Many people call it a wake-up call, exposing the fragility and inefficiency of supply chain and logistical systems. And at the same time, it demonstrated the importance of the role that supply chain and logistic professionals play in our today's global economy. So if our supply chains and logistical systems are not functioning properly, then our entire economy and business systems may crumble. So given this fact and kind of noticing that everyone now, even in the public, understands the notion of supply chain and logistics, now managers and investors are investing more and more in supply chain and logistics systems because they realize that they have no choice but investing more on digitization of their supply chains, working more on their e-commerce systems and efficiency of their logistical operations and so on. But what's the catch for university and supply chain education here? And what are the challenges that we are facing at universities is somehow related to the answers that I and Paul provided to your earlier questions. What is one of the university's main challenge is the diverse cohorts and different profiles of students that we are dealing with. So as you mentioned, we have undergrad program, postgrad program, executive programs, and so on. And their needs are entirely different. So in our executive programs, people are taking time away from their work and they're coming to the program just to get, real value of the course. So they know about the fundamentals and they really want to know what's the catch and what's going on and what is going to be the trend in future and what skills they should build to kind of deal with the challenges in the future. So looking at the undergrad and postgrad, so the fundamentals that we have been teaching the students, they are changing very rapidly. So if now in our programs we don't incorporate emerging trends in supply chain logistics, automation, e-commerce, and advanced manufacturing and its impact on supply chains and the new problems that they will rise as part of these kind of movements, then even our undergrad and postgrad students don't have the knowledge about the fundamentals, because the fundamentals that we have been teaching are really now outdated and old. So the real challenge here from my point of view is that the finding an optimum kind of point where we can kind of make a good balance between general and kind of fundamental concepts in our courses, as well as specific kind of topics and concepts and applications in our course. And, dealing with diverse range of students that we have, I think it's a very challenging and difficult task and needs really, as Paul mentioned, very strong innovation capability inside the universities to approach this challenging problem. The other thing that I want to mention here is the way that we look at industry engagement, Tony. At universities, we do have employability and industry engagement department. Fantastic people are supporting our programs and try to engage industry leaders and companies and corporations and support our students and help them with the to become more familiar with the real world practice of supply chain logistics, which is great. But academic, when I look at the ecosystem, I see that there is no, kind of comprehensive integration or an umbrella under which all the stakeholders are interacting with each other and co-creating values in a dynamic way. And as Paul mentioned, I think moving forward, we can't kind of just work in silos. I, as an academic, am not, just responsible for delivering the course and someone else creating industry engagement opportunities for my students. Now I need to work very closely with our employability department, our industry partners, making sure that whatever we do is well aligned with our curriculum and also the emerging trends that are happening in the real world. So to me, these are the two most challenging issues that we are facing at the moment.
Sure, no, those are great points. I mean, one of the things I thought, just listening to you both on that last kind of question, people talk about data skills now around data interpretation. The analysis of data is so much simpler now compared to because of the technology and because of the tools available for supply chain leaders. So it's not necessarily around processing the data, but it's the interpretation of data. That's nothing new, and I know a lot of people have been speaking about that, but both of you have raised the clarity of problem, and I think that's a really interesting topic because it also ties into another area in supply chain that I think is really hard right now is vendor selection in technology, because there are so many more options available, and they are broken down now, rather than a large enterprise system, they are broken down into specific functional processes. So they are exceptionally specialized. And so rather than having this large enterprising system like a SAP or an Oracle, you've got all of these specific functional tools that are advanced in terms of capability, but you need multiple tech to connect the entire supply chain ecosystem. But it's that clarity of problem. And then that ties back into, well, if I'm coming up in supply chain and I'm only really interested in the analysis or the technology side of supply chain, but I don't have the fundamental building blocks around what does this problem, what is the actual problem we're trying to solve through technology? What's the issue in the warehouse, or what's the issue with this particular transport network? If you don't have both of them, then you're just selecting a tool just to select a tool because it's the cheapest or it's the prettiest or sexiest or it gives you a nice dashboard. And that's where I can see some more challenges coming further down the road, as the shift in talent is certainly going, and I see it in the number of roles and the types of roles I asked to recruit now, so much more on the digital side of supply chain. But there's going to reach a point where it tips and people are not going to have the operational knowledge in inventory management or warehousing or transport to know how to use the technology effectively to solve the problem. So it's all like it's in a roundabout way, and it is a little bit of a vicious cycle. And it's just, I guess it's part of evolution in this functional space. But it's interesting that clarity of problem, that's a really nice way of defining it that I haven't thought of it, or no one said it so simply for me. So that definitely resonates. All right, back to you, Paul. I've got another question. What should universities do differently moving forward? What is the role of industry engagement and work integrated learning in shaping this future? How might students, professors, universities, and industries co-create a new future together?
Well, I think, again, your comments are serendipity because it it links to this question in a way, which is part of it's the myth, and it's the sort of holy grail of supply chain, which is that we can find a singular optimization on a given route. What it is managing a series of trade-offs, and you're actually operating, in I'm going to call it a performance envelope, and you're trying to be as efficient within an envelope, but you could be in all sorts of different settings of the various parameters that you're managing your supply chain with. To understand, and you can say, oh, the technology will do all that for you, but this comes back to your point, Tony, which is bang on, which is we have to make sure that our students and industry know how to both deliver a singular optimization solution and have a different, which is what I don't think they do very well right now and what needs to be worked on, which is how do you manage the tension between two unresolvable options? How do I have a distributed control system and centralized purchasing? How do you manage those two tensions? Because they're polar opposites.
Yep.
That is a totally different set of skills. And this is where the only way you learn how to manage through those, and you quickly realize as you deal with complex issues and projects, is that you need an integrative approach. We have to teach an integrative approach. Students have to learn an integrative approach. They have to learn that, yeah, I might be the supply chain analyst, but I need to know the input from the operations person.
Correct.
And I need to know the input from the staffing team. And I need to know the input from finance on our cost to serve. And I need to know all of these inputs to come up with a more holistic solution that doesn't penalize one group over the other and actually tries to solve for the system, not for the individual parts.
Yeah.
And so then how do you get that? How does a student, or how does industry, or how does the university actually develop that kind of understanding and capability? And it goes back to what obviously both Sean and I believe, which is we have to increase the connectivity between the university and industry, professors and students, around real use cases, scenarios, problems that need capability to be upskilled. And we need to then take that, now on the university side, and we need to bake that into our programs, into our assignments. Like the thing that gets me going to be on no compare is when a professor or any teacher gives an assignment that's not directly applicable to a real world problem. It drives me bananas. Anybody in a supply chain program, every single assignment, every single scenario should be based in reality.
Yeah.
That's how you teach a student about the complexities and the trade-offs, and through whether it's case studies or simulations or whatever, where they actually start to reconcile that what I thought was black and white isn't black and white.
Yeah.
There's a lot of judgment in here. And I think that the universities need to actually incentivize this kind of interaction and behavior. Like today, that's not what professors are incented by, as an example. You got to publish in the right journals. You got to do research that's hitting certain parameters. That's how you get tenure.
Yep.
0 on industry, affiliation. 0 on how many of your innovations commercialized. 0 on, what's the placement rate of your students in certain types of industries, in certain types of positions based on your curriculum, Dr. Paul. None of that, right?
Yeah.
And this lack of accountability around this is an issue. But it needs to, again, and Sean said it quite well, we need to think about it as the umbrella system, because they're all interconnected. If you go to the industry and try and get content, but then you don't have the reinforcing mechanisms within the university to reconfigure programs and change or increase the emphasis of a professor's time allocation into different areas, it doesn't matter if you've got industry affiliation. The back end won't change. And
Yeah.
similarly, if you change the back end, but you don't have the front end connection with industry happening. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Sure.
But just because there's a lot of work doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. It just means we need to have a plan. We need to build it and start small and start working. It will take, you know,
Yes.
10 years, 15 years to really get it right.
Yeah.
But the closer, and this is the fundamental thing that's causing our problem, is that when we don't have that tight connection and we don't break down the barriers to change inside the university, we create a gap between what the market needs and what the university delivers. And
Yeah.
if that gap gets too big, then ultimately, you know, universities, especially the smaller ones, will fail because they won't have the revenue stream.
Yeah, look, that's a great point. I mean, I laughed at one of your earlier comments just around real life applications. Again, going back to my own master's program, we did a logistics engineering course, and we had a group session where we had to do some modeling, and it was centered around a spacecraft flying to Mars, right? And it's around the cost of goods, distances, and all this stuff. And look, I think the analysis around measurement is practical, but the example has no real life bearing on exactly the type of work that anyone with these types of skills should be applying to the real world, right? So, and that's why it made me just remember when I was doing the work with the group, we all kind of talked and like, why are we using this example? Like, how is this ever going to apply to anything we ever do? So, but I can definitely see what you're saying there. Sean, just to jump on to Paul's points, do you see any specific examples in supply chain and logistics?
Absolutely. Actually, Paul's discussion reminds me of a very personal experience that I had some years ago. As I mentioned before, I had a few back and forth between university and industry. And in one occasion, I remember that right after my finishing my PhD studies, which was very much focused on analytical and quantitative kind of training in supply chain logistics, I joined a multinational corporate who are a leading company in supply chain logistics. And during the very first few weeks of my that journey, I was asked to work on a data set and develop some ideas and prepare some type of presentation and including some insights to be presented to a potential client. And I said, oh, that's an exciting task, and I'm very good at crunching data, so let me get on to this, and I will do an amazing job, no worries at all. So I was quite confident, excited, and very much interested and passionate as well. So, but given the training that I had, which was very much focused and in-depth during my course at one of the prestigious institutions, I started to, implement the approach that I was taught. And I was thinking at that time that this is the right approach. And as Paul mentioned, it's a mindset. The way that you teach your students, they will think that, okay, this is the way that they should implement their knowledge. And I was, implementing sophisticated optimization techniques and sophisticated programming languages to kind of understand the data and come up with some exact solutions for that potential client. And it takes quite some time. And after spending, almost 10 working days on the data set, my manager asked me, okay, what are you doing? What do we have? Is the presentation ready? And I said, presentation? I'm still working on the data. And I have really nothing to present yet. It takes time. And I remember it's very clearly the kind of reaction of my manager at that time, which was really kind of, I still remember it as a very good experience as a learning, which was, we don't need an in-depth analysis when we are going to meet a client for the first time. And we are dealing with such potential clients on a daily basis. And we can't spend and kind of waste our resources on doing in-depth analysis for potential clients at this stage. Like this is not required. What we do is a simple estimation. So you don't need to apply such sophisticated methods at this stage. At this stage, you need to just do some simple Excel or Access, kind of based analysis and come up with some estimation. And it was shocking to me at that time. Oh, what they taught us in this way, but now my manager is asking me this. And that's kind of triggered this in my mind that, okay, so it's a kind of situational based. So basically we as, academics, now when I'm playing an academic role in university, I know that, it's about mindset and it's about different situations. When we are teaching our students, when we are providing learning contents, we need to be very careful and mindful of the fact that these students after graduation, they will be the product of what we are teaching them now. So it's about mindset. So if I want to answer, your question with that introduction, Tony, I will break it into, again, teaching and industry engagement in supply chain and logistics. From academic point of view, we are dealing with a challenging kind of question. And the question is, if I jump the fundamentals and the kind of theoretical aspect of my supply chain course or the subject that I'm teaching and just focus on different scenarios and situational kind of teaching approach, then I'm always, kind of concerned if my students can connect to these specific examples, right? So I feel that maybe my students really need to kind of get and obtain all those general knowledge from me as a professor. But the thing is that the time limit and the resource limit that we have kind of stops us to provide both teach all fundamentals, and at the same time tap into all those situational kind of based examples to our students. Yep. So students, on the other hand, still unfortunately they have this mindset of sitting in the class and a professor will teach you everything. And while we are offering most of our subjects in blended format, and this is a sad fact, but unfortunately, still our students cannot connect to this blended kind of teaching mode. They still feel that they come to the class and the professor should give them lecture from A to Z, but that doesn't work. So to me, we really need to work on our mindset and also make sure that we can kind of make our students familiar with the reality of higher education system. And this, we really need to work hard to change the mindset of both academics and the students. And it's a difficult and challenging task for all of us. As for industry engagement, some universities who provide solid supply chain management programs, they have been approaching this, in different ways in terms of industry engagement, making sure that their students, gain the practical knowledge before graduation. Some establish, strong relationships with many different industries, and they define a lot of, ad hoc mini projects for their students, and they embed all those projects into their curriculum, which is great. And some universities, they embed solid internship work integrated programs. And I know one university, for example, they have more than 200 hours of internship and work integrated learning, which is compulsory and kind of mandatory for all students before graduation. But not all universities are practicing in a similar way. They have different modes of industry engagement. But what I see as a challenge and a trend that we need to really think about, again, kind of linking it to the umbrella system that I mentioned, is that such ad hoc and kind of silo-based initiatives will not work anymore. This is at least my opinion. And the reason is that post-COVID-19, our economy is suffering much more than before. More businesses are dealing with budget constraint now, and supply chain, industry is not an exception. And we know that most, some of the most innovative companies are the startup and SMEs. And they are suffering from the budget constraints and budget issues more than the established companies as well. So if you, as a university, if we don't really offer some meaningful value to our industry partners in terms of what we are doing for you and what is in it for you, very difficult to accept the same kind of traditional way of industry university collaboration to work. I think it would be really challenging. So what we are doing, as an example, in supply chain space, post COVID-19, during the COVID-19, we approached one multinational corporate, the Australian branch. And we talked about establishing a strategic partnership working on a specific supply chain management related project. And at that time, they mentioned that they are very much interested in supply chain digitization transformation in their organization. And they don't have the capability, they don't have the kind of fundamental research and development resources to initiate such projects. So what we are designing and working together, and what we are doing is that we said, okay, so let's lay down a plan for our collaboration at different levels. And what we are doing, we said that at faculty level and researcher level in universities, we have started to do some a scoping review and literature review, both from industry resources and academic resources, to understand the trends of supply chain and logistic digitization. So this will be the fundamentals of this partnership for us, co-creating knowledge for that corporation in collaboration with university. And at the same time, we are trying to, after identifying the key project, the scope of the project and also the key objective of the project, then what we are planning to do is to creating some mini projects based on the bigger project that we are doing with the corporate. So, and then we distribute all those mini projects. It could be, let's say, some specific analytics-based problems in their day-to-day operations. So some operational problems can be identified, and then they will be distributed to different subjects of our supply chain management course. And, and our students at different levels, depending on their capability and also the knowledge level, they will be allocated to those specific problems. And also we are trying to link our work integrated learning and internship and placement capability and initiative to all those projects which are suitable to be kind of defined as an internship project. So this is just an example of what universities are doing and can do. I'm sure that there are other universities that are practicing similar models or even better models. And I think we need to talk about such collaborative models more and more, because this is the only way that we can ensure and we can kind of demonstrate to our industry partners that these are the values that we can make and create for you. And, and at the same time, these are what our students are gaining from this collaboration. So I feel this could answer your question, and I'm more than happy to receive any feedback or comment from you and Paul.
That's great, Sean. So look, just conscious of time, guys, here. Paul, I'm just going to pass it to you. Any closing remarks or thoughts you want to pass on, or anything you'd like to kind of close off with?
Yeah, I mean, my sort of summary kind of opinion is that we in the university system have to show some leadership in reaching out and finding those partnerships and creating the space where those new behaviors can live, and finding those innovative partners to make this happen and to embark on the journey. It's not going to happen overnight, but it needs to be done. And if it's not done by the universities, then other smaller colleges or universities will pick it up. And we just need to get closer and closer to the marketplace. The basic research is fine, but we need to get more.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. You skipped there a little bit, Paul. But look, so guys, I think we're going to wrap it up here. But I wanted to extend a very generous, I mean, you both have been exceptionally generous with your time here. Thank you very much for contributing so much and spending this much time with us. For everyone who's watched the video, thank you for watching it. Love to hear your comments and thoughts and any feedback you've had on the session or these topics. Both Sean and Paul will be tagged in these sessions as well. So if you've got any questions for them specifically, feel free to reach out to them. But thanks again for everyone joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the session. We'll talk to you soon. Take care, guys. See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks. It was a pleasure. Bye.